Welcome to 12 Gauge Investigating.
Shadows where the truth hides deep. Echoes of the lost and the secrets they keep. Cold cases burn in the back of your mind. We dig through the dark, one, two at a time. This ain't fiction, this is blood, this is truth. 12 Gauge Investigative, justice uncaged. We ask the questions they're too scared to say, shining a light where the guilty pray. From killers to whispers, we won't look away.
All right, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well tonight on this Monday evening. My name is 12 Gauge, and welcome to my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. You know, tonight I chose to do a little reading and continue reading on the Book of Murder by Matt Murphy, who is a wonderful author and was a prosecutor in Orange County for a lot of years. And we've been reading this book probably for a while now, and we've been learning a lot about different cases and how the prosecution looks at cases and how Matt was able to go through the cases that he did try and how he was able to piece the prosecution part of it and get the conviction, because I don't believe that he lost any cases at all. If you missed the plea deal portion that I did earlier, I hope that you go back and look at it, because it is very informative regarding the plea deal that was just signed by Brian Koberger in the Idaho 4 case. It gives you a little understanding of what a plea bargain is and exactly what all can be done when it comes to that. Because, you know, it's very confusing, and sometimes individuals do not really understand it to the fullest. And I tried to break it down where it's easily understood and also where people can kind of incorporate their questions into the video process. So I'm going to go ahead and get this set up. Going to turn on some air because it's getting kind of warm in here, and then we're gonna read. Let me set this up. I was gonna do the Carmelo Anthony case tonight, but I just did not. I mean, it's been a long weekend, and I'm still kind of jet lagged, I guess. So I didn't really feel like jumping into that controversy. But I am going to do that case, and I'm going to highlight portions of it that people don't really understand when it comes to that case, because it's an up and down, back and forth type of case as well. And if you really aren't versed to it, you're going to take sides, just like all these others. Hold on a second. I am on call this week, so If you hear me suddenly have to go off, that's why. Hopefully the phone doesn't ring. Well, a member for 6 months. Wow. Well, welcome, member for 6 months. Welcome. Yeah, Cricket's still here with me. She's gonna be here till Saturday. So here we go. It said, doing so at the same time, some poor family was enduring the worst thing they could ever experience. Besides the detectives who called me were more than professional colleagues, they had become my friends. And we'd been through a couple dozen murder cases together by this point in my time in homicide. So I didn't even think twice when I got the call. Of course, I was going to jump in the car and be at the scene as quickly as I could, especially with the most obvious suspect in the case, assumed to be armed, dangerous, and roaming the streets. As we drove back to Orange County, my girlfriend turned to me. I have to say, I think this is the worst birthday I've ever had. She repeated the line over and over again as we drove back with takeout boxes at our feet. Unsurprisingly, the relationship didn't last, just like the rest of them. I hate to say it because, of course, I cared, but I kind of didn't really care. Or put it another way, it was regrettable, and yet I had no regrets. I was, I admit now, a terrible boyfriend. Well, Matt, you're not the only one, and I'm sure that you won't be the last one. I myself have been a bad boyfriend from time to time as well, so I can totally understand it. As detectives began putting the pieces of the investigation together, it appeared pretty obvious that Sam Herr was responsible for this killing. There was no sign a stranger had broken into your apartment, and no clear motive beyond what seemed like anger over perhaps another man in Julie's life. And Sam did have a notable history. In addition to having seen real combat as a trained paratrooper, the legal scrape I mentioned earlier was actually for a murder charge. 8 years earlier, he had been accused of luring a friend to an area where the friend was and then beaten to death. Y'all hold on a second. Hello? Sorry about that, y'all. I tell you, it just gets better. Um, where am I? 8 years earlier, he had been accused of luring a friend to an area where the friend was then beaten to death in a gang-related killing. Sam, who was not in a gang, was also severely beaten. He was charged as an aider and abettor. We didn't know how much the case at the point, except that he had been acquitted. But having been a murder suspect in the past certainly caught our attention. We also wondered if there was a possibility of PTSD given his services in Afghanistan. This young man had seen actual warfare. He had seen friends killed by the Taliban, and he had also killed people on the other side during the horrors of combat. Now there was a dead woman in his apartment, and he appeared to be on the run. Sam could not have been a more obvious suspect. I attended Julie's autopsy the next morning. The Orange County Sheriff's had a viewing room in the coroner's office where you can observe a post-mortem examination from behind glass. Julie's was equal parts heartbreaking and thought-provoking. Her fatal injuries were obscured by layers of perfectly cut, thick black hair. With the fine group of detectives I had on this case, I felt very confident we would solve every aspect. except for one. Where did she go? Where do any of us go? I'm going to pause it for a minute. I'm going to take a moment. I have a phone call that I got to take. I will play some music. Please don't leave. I just got to take care of this right quick. So if you guys could please give me the benefit of the doubt to be right back. It might not be like in a couple of seconds, but I want you guys to at least listen to some music on, okay?
As I sit in this broken chair, an echo runs wild through my mind. A picture of someone who never knew pain. An angel in black forged by time. She walked with a silence the streets couldn't break. A blade by her cheek to settle the stakes. An essence of strength carved deep in her soul. Life took its shots, but she never let go. She walked with a silence the streets couldn't break. A blade by her cheek to settle the stakes. An essence of strength carved deep in her soul. Life took its shots, but she never let go. She's an actress in the eyes, a spark in the smile, capturing moments, bending them to her style. Some saw petals fall where she once stood. Now they walk in tears where roses once bloomed. An essence of strength, but the streets took their toll. A blade by the cheek just to stay in control. A child of the flame, born into the heat, running from fire with chaos at her feet. What's my name? She cried to the night. A soul in the shadows, still burning bright. She wore grace like a weapon, wild like the sea. A mystery wrapped in shattered poetry. Her dress, her smile, her storm, her truth. Who is she? You wish you knew. A total eclipse could never steal her light. She danced through the dark, vanished from sight. Many lived this life, but never made it home. She was more than a name etched in stone. Off in the sunset, a dream chased in vain. A life of misdeeds washed away by the rain. Let there be solace as we speak her name. Raven, fly away. Dearly, we'll miss you. Amen. An essence of strength, the streets took their toll. A blade by the cheek to keep those in score. An essence of strength, the streets took their toll. But her fire remains untouched. Oh! Sighs. As I sit in this broken chair, an echo runs wild through my mind. A picture of someone who never knew pain. An angel in black forged by time. streets couldn't break, a blade by her cheek to settle the stakes, an essence of strength carved deep in her soul. Life took its shots, but she never let go. She walked with a silence the streets couldn't break, a blade by her cheek to settle the stakes, an essence of strength carved deep in her soul. Life took its shots, but she never let go. She's an actress in the eyes, a spark in the smile, capturing moments, bending them to her style. Some saw petals fall where she once stood, now they walk in tears where roses once bloomed. An essence of strength, but the streets took their toll. A blade by the cheek just to stay in control. A child of the flame, born into the heat, running from fire with chaos at her feet. What's my name? She cried to the night. A soul in the shadows, still burning bright. She wore grace like a weapon, wild like the sea, a mystery wrapped in shattered poetry. Her dress, her smile, her storm, her truth. Who is she? You wish you knew. A total eclipse could never steal her light. She danced through the dark.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you so much for hanging in there. How much stress can you possibly take before you break? That is the question. These kids are going to learn. You mess with fire, you're going to get burnt. Hey, JB. Hey, Rondi. Hey, Texas. Hey, Phoenix. Hey, Leslie and Billy. Nina. So I was reading The Book of Murder by Matt Murray. Let me see where I'm at. Autopsy, the profound thing. You know, StreamYard has said it's having issues, and I don't know exactly what the hell is going on with it. I really don't. I mean, I might try doing this on YouTube. I don't know. I don't understand how come it keeps knocking me off. I have full internet, I have full everything, and it's still knocking me off. I mean, it's bullshit. I mean, I might have to just go to freaking YouTube and do it from there. I'm here. Can y'all hear me? Hello? Can y'all hear me? Okay, thank you. I don't know what's going on. I keep getting knocked off. I don't know what what's going on. I have no clue. Let me make this bigger so I don't have to change screen to be able to see it. Because I'll be reading over there and I won't be able to see when I go off the screen. I was having this problem the other day. I don't know what the hell. So it says somewhere in the cosmic religious ethereal mix there is also justice. I would challenge physiological nihilists who believe that nothing really matters to sit down with the bereaved mother of a murdered child and hold that view at the end of the conversation. From a moral perspective, what I was staring at on the cold pathology table was an affront to justice in every conceivable way. From the perspective of Julie's family and the community at large, this was an outrage. Our task as law enforcement professionals responsible for this case was to calmly and methodically untangle the mystery. Then, if successful, and within the strict limits of ethics and the law, we needed to do everything we legally could to set things right. Police began an intense search for Sam, but Steve Herr was convinced that there was more to the story. He insisted that Sam would never have done this, especially once he realized that the victim was Julie, whom was Sam's close but entirely platonic friend. Julie had met Sam at Orange Coast, initially tutoring him in an anthropology class where he ultimately got an A. They had been spending a lot of time together, with Julie even sleeping over some nights in Sam's apartment, but always on the couch. To Steve, the fact that Julie had been murdered in Sam's bed made absolutely no sense. From the perspective of the police, this was not the first time they had seen a parent slow to accept that their son or daughter was capable of committing a terrible crime. Still, even in the context of a loving parent, Steve was persuasively insistent. As the search continued, fruitfully at best, Steve Herr embarked on his own parallel investigation. He talked to Sam's friends, and one of them, Ruben Salas, reported something surprisingly. He had called Sam's phone that weekend when Sam hadn't shown up to a party he had promised to attend, and someone had answered, but it wasn't Sam. It was a man whose voice he didn't recognize. "Who is this?" Ruben reportedly asked, and the man said, "I'm busy right now. Lots of problems with my family." "What are you talking about?" asked Ruben, and then the man supposedly hung up. This was more than curious to Steve because Sam was very close to his family. He even had a tattoo on his chest with a heart. wrapped by the words Mom and Dad. And Steve felt confident he would know if there were any issues. It was also curious to Steve because this was not only the time these so-called family problems had come up in the first few days of the investigation. On Julie's phone, there was a string of text messages from Sam's phone from the night before Steve found her body. Can you come over tonight? Midnight alone? One text said. Going out for a bit. Very upset. Need to talk. The text messages painted a respectfully or a superficially convincing picture of a young man in crisis, a combat veteran who had seen terrible things and appeared to be at some emotional breaking point. Perhaps it seemed a young man so distraught that he was capable of committing murder. Please, no sex. I need to talk to someone. The text continued. I'm hurting with some bad fam crap. I can't be alone. No sex, please. I'm begging as a brother. Julie had written back. LOL. Ooh, Sam. We are like bro and sister. No sex. Again, Sam had no idea what this family drama could have possibly been. There was an earlier text from Sam's phone to Julie. Not too much. Helping Dan. Then headed to folks for the weekend. So Steve called Dan, Sam's friend and neighbor Daniel Wozniak, to ask about this. Dan mentioned that the last time he saw Sam, he had been talking about having some problems with the women in his family. Steve felt like none of this supposed family drama made any sense, and it made him very suspicious that something strange was going on. Meanwhile, the sexual assault exam on Julie's body was negative, and friends insisted, just like Steve and Raquel Herr had said, that Sam and Julie were not sexually involved. There would not have been no need for it to have been a secret affair. There would have been no need for it to have been a secret affair if something had been going on. They were both single. So the murder scene was looking weirder and weirder. And the texts were seeming stranger, not to mention Ruben's reported phone call. Another detail that didn't quite fit, Julie's body had marked areas of lividity and blanching on the skin of her buttocks. Lividity occurs when the heart stops beating and blood begins to settle in areas affected by gravity. Blanching happens when the pressure on the skin forces the blood out. The combination results in red and white blotches that begin to set in anywhere from 30 minutes to about 4 hours after death. So a person who is lying on their back when they die will typically have lividity on their back, their buttocks, and the back of their thighs. Julie had it on her buttocks, in the shape of the back pockets of her jeans. You would expect to see that if she was on her back when she died, but she had been found bent face forward over Sam's bed. The crazed sexual assault murder scenario seemed to be contradicted by the forensic evidence the moment the police got into Sam's bedroom. It suggested very strongly that Julie had been dead for at least 30 minutes, but probably more like several hours, before her jeans were cut off. That indicated a staged scene, but who had staged it and why? The questions only got more obvious. Steve had access to Sam's banking passwords and went online to check Sam's account. As it turned out, someone had been withdrawing money and had even charged the pizza to Sam's debit card. The pizza place was half an hour up the coast in Long Beach. Police had been tracking this activity as well. They got the video camera footage from the ATM withdrawals, but it wasn't Sam or anyone known to be associated with him. In fact, it looked like a teenager wearing a hat and glasses to hide his face. Police wanted to identify this person, so they looked for a connection. Was there someone who knew Sam who lived in the Camden complex and who had some connection to the Long Beach police? The police split up. Somewhat the variety of ATM machines, some staked out the pizza place, and some wondered if Daniel Wozniak might be more help finding Sam, even after Steve's conversation with him. There had been a wedding invitation on Sam's countertop for the upcoming nuptials of Dan and his fiancée, Rachel Buffet, and Dan had grown up in Long Beach. They went to one of Dan's listed addresses and it appeared to be a storefront. When they walked inside, they encountered Dan and Rachel. Dan was cooperating and explained to the police that he had heard about Julie's murder from his friends. He said he had also heard that nobody could find Sam. He said he last saw Sam on Friday, the day before Julie's body was found, and that Sam had given him $100 to help pay his rent. He said Sam drove him to help take care of some wedding errands since Dan and Rachel were set to get married that Friday, and that Sam was with another friend, a white guy in his 20s wearing a black baseball hat. Dan said they ate lunch, and then Sam dropped him back at the Camden and drove off with his friend in a black Mazda. Dan said he had not seen Sam since. But the police were not finished in Long Beach. Later that day, Sam's ATM card was used again at a Co-America bank by the same teenager from the previous surveillance cameras. And this time, the police had the bank staked out so they saw the boy interact with someone in a green smart car and then return to a house on Granada Avenue. The address matched the one detectives had learned was the delivery address from the pizza place. That afternoon, with police watching the pizza place, a second pizza was ordered for delivery to the same address, again using Sam's debit card. And this time they were ready. A police helicopter circled above just in case, and officers approached the house, expecting to find Sam inside, armed and dangerous. Not quite. Instead, they found 16-year-old Wesley Freelick, the kid from the ATM surveillance footage, and his friends inside Wesley's mother's house, staring wide-eyed at guns coming at them from every direction. Handcuffed and on the ground, Wesley later testified he crapped his pants. And as soon as police told him this was about a homicide investigation, Wesley revealed everything he knew. A man had told him he was working for a bail bondsman and needed a third party to help collect money for the city from someone who had skipped bail. He told them it was kind of legal, not really illegal, and produced a stack of paperwork supposedly providing the legitimacy of the plan. He asked Wesley to take money out of the banks using this person's ATM card and told him he could order some pizzas on the card as a bonus. Wesley, again, just 16 years old, believed this was legitimate, especially because he knew the man and trusted him. Who was the man? It was Daniel Wozniak. Suddenly, we were able to start connecting some dots. Wozniak had met Wesley 6 years earlier when he was 10 years old and involved in a play at a local theater. Wesley's mom was a theater teacher, and Wesley was drawn to acting. Dan was a local performer and had taken Wesley under his wing. He was a fantastic guy, Wesley later said about Dan. One of those guys that you actually wanted to be around. They made you laugh. Very sweet person. Dan may have acted sweet, but at this point he was also financially desperate. He and Rachel were unemployed local actors, and Dan could barely keep a job. He had worked at Verizon for a short time, then AAA. He trained at another company but never showed up for his first day. He worked at a startup for 2 months, earning a total of $250. He was being paid nothing for the lead performance in his current play, the Hunger Artists Theater production of the musical Nine. Just days before Julie's murder, Dan was served an eviction notice. He owed over $3,000 in back rent. His bank accounts were overdrawn. He was trying to borrow money from everyone he knew. The previous summer, he had been arrested on a DUI and failed to appear in court. The week before Julie's murder, he was stopped for a seatbelt violation and arrested because of the outstanding warrant. He scrambled to put together enough money for bail. He was facing pending legal costs, not to mention the unpaid rent and the need for money to cover his and Rachel's everyday expenses. She was unemployed as well. Dan and Wesley hadn't talked in 2 years when Wozniak called him out of the blue on a Tuesday before Julie's body was found. Wesley knew nothing about Julie and nothing about Sam, except that he had his ATM card and PIN number. But Daniel Wozniak clearly knew Sam, and we were starting to wonder if this case was as straightforward as it had seemed. So, let me say hello to the chat. Let me see how you are doing in there. So it looks like we got a couple new people in the chat. Walt Harris, how you doing, buddy? What are y'all talking about? Leslie and Billy's back. The investigators knew their next step. They had to talk to Dan again. They believed at this point that Dan had not been truthful earlier and that he knew much more than he had initially revealed. We thought he was going to be the key to finding Sam and probably a critical witness in delivering justice to Julie's family. It still appeared that Sam was dangerous and on the run. Although others in the investigation were starting to wonder if this was something far more diabolical and complex. Time, as always, was of the essence. Detectives called Dan and asked him to meet for a more formal interview. He said he couldn't talk because he had his bachelor party that night. But when detectives are investigating a murder, you can't just push them off until it's convenient. Clearly, Wozniak had withheld some information from the police, and at the very least appeared to be an accessory after the fact to murder. That is a felony, so detectives decided to crash his party at Tsunami Sushi in Huntington Beach. They arrested Dan for helping Sam and transported him to Costa Mesa to conduct a formal interview. Detectives Mike Delgado and Mike Cohen, two old-school veterans police officers, began their interview of Dan. And it was like watching an actor who couldn't quite remember his lines. Dan was smooth at first and quite charming, but his story kept changing in subtle and in not-so-subtle ways. It didn't take long before Dan's tale started to sound bizarre. Wozniak said he was involved in a credit card scam with Sam, helping him cover up Julie's murder. He said that Sam knocked on his door on Saturday morning, told him there was a body in his apartment, and that he needed money. Wozniak said that he decided to involve Wesley, but lied to get Wesley to do it. Wozniak then said that Sam told him the murder was part of a drug-fueled rage when Julie refused to have sex with him. Wozniak said he never saw Julie's body and never saw the gun. He said Sam threatened to kill him and Rachel if he didn't help. He said he drove Sam to the Los Alamitos military base to think, and there they came up with a plan to have Wesley withdraw cash from Sam's bank account and have Sam call in 30 days to get the money. Dan later shifted his story and said he dropped Sam off at a shopping mall in Long Beach and hadn't seen him since. I lied and I'm sorry for the lying, he told detectives. I made up the mystery man in the baseball hat. I'm an actor and I lied to Wesley too. Wozniak went on to say that Sam was depressed about his family, that he was taking drugs, and that he killed Julie. He told the detectives he had abandoned Sam's car after he dropped him off at the mall. Throughout the interview, Wozniak appeared to be reciting a story he had come up with before. But to the experienced detectives, it was a story that didn't make any sense. Does that story make sense to you guys? Does that make sense to y'all? Tell me what you think about that story. Does it sound like something that's believable? Or does it sound like something that is just fabricated? First, why would Sam involve Dan in this at all? Why not just go to the bank and take out all his money before Julie's body was discovered? And why was Wesley saying that Dan had approached him about the bank card planned days earlier? Why would Dan help Sam instead of calling the police? Why, of all places a person could go to think, would Sam ever want to go to a military base? Why would Sam want to be dropped off at a shopping mall if he was trying to run away from the scene? Once again, just like with Sam Lopez's initial interview in the Kathy Torres case, things so often come. He picked up his coffee cup and said, "Hey, that was easy," and started to get up. He clearly believed detectives bought this story. But he also didn't realize that helping a murderer get away is a serious crime in itself. At this point in the investigation, it still appeared that Sam was likely the killer, and Dan had been helping him. I still thought Dan would probably lead us to Sam. He would be arrested, and the case would begin its journey through the system. Wozniak, however, just kept talking, and the story continued to drift. Dan insisted he didn't know where Sam was or where the gun was, but he said he really wanted to get to his wedding on Friday and offered to make a deal. As detectives began pressing him on some of the details of his story, Wozniak said he would tell them where Sam was if they agreed to let him go free. That was not the way these things go, and the Wozniak's offer meant that he had been continuing to hold back information. At this point, detectives decided to employ an investigative technique known as a ruse, basically a bluff. DNA results wouldn't be back for days and more likely even weeks, but it was clear that Dan didn't have a great handle on the mechanics of criminal investigation. On TV, we often see this kind of thing done aggressively, with angry accusations from the detectives and voices raised on both sides. Good drama in a movie, but lousy police work in real life. Experienced detectives, the true professionals, often comport themselves with the exact opposite approach. They want the suspect to like them, to trust them, to let down their guard, and mostly to keep talking. Like everything in life, it's almost always better to be nice. Here they politely informed Dan that his DNA was found on Julie's body, just to see where that would take his story. Dramatically, Wozniak raised his voice to a shout and changed the story yet again. "Okay, I saw the goddamn body. Is that what you want to hear? The goddamn body?" He then told detectives he had been standing over her, and that must be how his DNA got there. The detectives explained that DNA doesn't just fall off a person and onto a dead body. "I saw 2 gunshots in her head, and I saw her pants, like ripped and cut." Detective Sergeant Ed Everett had been monitoring the interview closely from another room. "We had all either been on the scene, attended the autopsy, or both. For Everett, this was the moment the investigation changed. Unless Dan had been there when the gun was fired, there was no way he could have seen 2 gunshots in her head. All you could really see was blood and brains. There were no neat holes or clear bullet exits, just long, stylish black hair and Julie's tiara. There was no way he could have seen that. Everett entered the room and pushed back. Wozniak tried to backtrack. He said Sam told him he shot her twice. Then he said he helped clean up the bullet casing. He was digging himself a deeper and deeper hole, not only putting himself in the position of helping Sam get away, but potentially even being there for the murder. At the very least, he had confessed to cleaning up the scene. Police brought in Dan's fiancée, Rachel Buffet, to interview her as well. After speaking to her, detectives put her in a room with Dan. Sergeant Everett asked Wozniak to explain to Rachel what he had just confessed to them. When Wozniak started speaking, Rachel's reaction was also notable. She was completely unemotional, clinical even. It was as if they'd rehearsed her back and forth. She was supposedly being told for the first time that their friend Sam had killed their other friend Julie, and that her fiancé had helped him. Detectives were expecting disbelief and horror, but there was no emotion at all. It was as if she knew it all already, which made us think that perhaps she did. Her knowledge would make her principal in the murder, but it could mean she was an accessory after the fact. Like Dan. At this point, we just didn't know. Rachel's interview contained some interesting nuggets. At one point, she misunderstood a question and thought detectives were asking about her sex life with Dan. Well, it's not exactly freaking awesome, she said, intimidating that Wozniak had a small penis. After the police let Rachel go, they sent Dan back to his holding cell. Later, he had to call Rachel. The jail phone is, of course, a recorded line. It was not monitored. Oh my God. It was not monitored in real time, but as detectives listened to the tape afterward, they were stunned by the back and forth. Rachel, what did you do? I helped Sam cover some stuff up and helped him get some drugs. That's it. I didn't murder anybody. Rachel, my mom's working on canceling all the wedding plans now. And I just talked to Tim, and I need to make a phone call to the detective now. Tim is Dan's brother. More about him soon. Dan, why? I need to call the detective first, because I need to call him and let him know before they catch me in this recording device, because it looks like I'm not trying to tell him right away. Tim says he has evidence with him, or he knew where it was or something. Dan, then I'm doomed. Rachel, yeah, do you know that Tim had some evidence? Dan, yeah. Oh God, oh God, oh God. Okay. Oh, Dan, you're in trouble, brother. Rachel, he was really frantic and said something, and something slipped that he had evidence, so I have to. Dan, no, don't. That can't be found. Rachel, do you realize they're recording this phone conversation anyways? You're being an absolute ass to try and lie again. Rachel had gone to Dan's family's house to let them know Dan had been arrested. His brother Tim told her he had evidence. Once Rachel told Dan that she was going to go to the detectives with the information, Dan decided he needed to talk to them himself. He asked for a meeting. He said he had something he needed to tell detectives. Jose Morales brought him into the interrogation room and was shocked by what he heard. You said you wanted to talk to me. What's going on? He asked. I'm crazy and I did it. You did what? I killed Julie and I killed Sam. We knew Wozniak was in deep, but for my part, I certainly did not expect this. We had no real evidence until that moment that Sam wasn't just on the run. Although others suspected Dan was shady, his true involvement was unclear. Not to credit the detectives who refused to bite on the obvious clues when they first entered Sam's apartment. But this? Sam was a badass combat veteran, and Wozniak was an out-of-shape, pasty white, unemployed community theater actor who let his fiancée walk all over him. This was more than a huge twist. This changed everything. Wozniak went on to explain that he had killed Sam first with Wozniak's father's antique pistol and that he did it for money, $62,000 that he'd learned Sam had saved in combat pay. See, as you might imagine, the rugged mountain passes in Afghanistan didn't offer a young soldier much in the way of nightlife or other opportunities to spend their money. So Sam carefully saved his salary, sending it home for his father, Steve, who helped Sam manage his bank account while he was away. That $62,000 was going to be life-changing for Sam to help him realize his ambition of going back to the Army as an officer. Instead, it was his downfall. Dan had lured Sam to the Liberty Theater on the Los Alamitos military base, saying he needed the help to move some stuff. They went up a ladder to an attic above the stage, and Dan asked Sam to bend down to help him lift something. He then drew the pistol and shot him in the back of the head. The first shot didn't kill him. Sam said to Dan, "I need help. Something shocked me." The ancient firearm jammed, and in one of the only competent things Daniel Wozniak ever did in his entire miserable life, he cleared the jam, re-racked the next round, and aimed it at the side of Sam Hurst's skull, shooting him again, this time killing him. Sadly, Daniel Wozniak was only getting started. This was Friday afternoon. Dan left Sam's body in the attic, took his keys, phone, and wallet. He had to have memorized Sam's PIN at some point, watching over Sam's shoulder at some ATM, and drove directly to involve an innocent 16-year-old kid. He picked up a Wesley Freelick and drove him to a nearby bank to withdraw the first batch of cash. Wesley had never used an ATM before. Wozniak then began texting Sam's friends, trying to lure one of them into the next phase of his plan. The first potential witness, or the first potential victim, did not respond to the text from Sam's phone, and her slow response absolutely saved her life. Tragically, soon after, Julie texted Sam to see how he was doing. This meant she had unwittingly just landed in Wozniak's sticky web. Wozniak knew of her, of course. She was often around the Camden apartments and was frequently visiting Sam with Sam's buddy, Lester. She was even Facebook friends with Rachel, Dan's fiancée. Wozniak would have known she was sweet and fun and totally innocent. He would have known she was a student at OCC and probably that she dreamed of being a fashion designer. And as someone who would certainly respond to a friend in trouble, she was perfect for what Wozniak wanted to do. What he did know, which would later prove to be a critical error, was that her relationship with Sam Herr was purely platonic. Wozniak sent her the first of several text messages. The exchange is a perfect representation of both the cynical manipulation of Daniel Wozniak and the sweet innocence of Julie Kiyobashi. Dan asked Sam, "I really just want to talk. I can't talk about it. I need someone I trust." "Julie, you can trust me, I promise. I'm not going to say anything, I promise. Pinky promise." Later. Dan, "Thank you. Be here at midnight? I'll be back around then." "Okay, I can't spend the night though." Dan, "That's cool. You're saving my life." Julie, "I'm sorry, but I promise to be there at midnight." Dan, "Okay. Thank you so much again. I feel I have no one I can share this with. You sure you won't let me down?" Julie, "I never let my friends down when they need me. They're no problem." Dan, "Thank you. You're an angel." So while Sam's body was beginning to enter the first stage of the human composition, In the attic of a community theater on a military base, the trap for Julie had been set. Dan then proceeded, "You're not reading this wrong," to perform that evening in his lead role in Nine, singing, dancing, and laughing. For those unfamiliar with the play, it is a musical about a fictional Italian film director named Guido Contini who is reflecting on his 40th birthday and the mistakes of his life. In one scene, Wozniak was required to croon the song Getting Tall to a small boy representing the director in his youth. It is literally about growing up and taking responsibility for yourself. Wozniak nailed the performance and utterly failed to contemplate the meaning of the song. The entire play centered around Dan's character, and he didn't appear to miss a single line. No one suspected a thing. The play ended at around 10:30 p.m. Julie had been at dinner with her brother Taka, where he asked her to be a bridesmaid at his upcoming wedding. Julie was positively thrilled, and he gave her a tiara to wear on the big day. She was so excited that she put it on immediately. The text from Dan as Sam continued, and Julie told Taka that Sam was having a hard time. Taka, who adored his sister, worried that Julie was going to be out too late. He asked her to text him when she got there. Dan, how long you thinking? Julie, 30 minutes. Cool. Just text me at freeway. Please don't bring anyone. I really don't want anyone else to know what's going on. Julie, no, I'm by myself. Julie, just exited. Julie, hey buddy, I'm here, and I'm walking to your place. Julie to Taka, I'm at Sam's. Julie to Sam. Taka, okay, good night. We had a lot of fun tonight. Be safe. Julie to Taka, yeah, thank you so much. Julie to Sam, hey buddy, where are you? I'm freezing. Julie, which was certainly Wozniak at this point, to Taka. Uh-oh, Sam is crying. It's not good. That was the final text from Julie's phone. And Wozniak confessed that he met Julie outside of Sam's apartment and told her that Sam had asked him to come too. Dan let them into his apartment and told Julie she should go see something on Sam's bed. She bent over and he shot her in the head twice, and then went back to his apartment as if nothing had happened. He literally killed Julie Kobayashi, an innocent 23-year-old woman, to use her body as a decoy. He wanted to create a false trail of evidence indicating that Sam was on the run and throw police off the scent. As her brother Taka would later testify, what the hell? 2 murders already committed. Saturday was a busy day for Daniel Wozniak. First, he returned to Sam's apartment to stage the scene, cutting Julie's jeans, thus the unexpected lividity on Julie's skin. Writing the message on her shirt, drawing his weird sketch, and finding and taking Sam's checkbook and passport. He used Wesley to get more cash from Sam's account, then realized he had to deal with Sam's corpse. Wait, that just keeps getting better. Realizing he couldn't carry Sam's entire body by himself, he stopped by a friend's house and got some tools. He climbed up the ladder into the theater attic, proceeded to cut off Sam's clothing with scissors, and then hacked off Sam's right forearm with a wood saw and chopped off his left arm below the elbow with a hatchet. Wozniak then chopped and sawed Sam's head off. He packed the arms and head in a backpack, then drove to a nearby nature park and threw them into the bushes in a relatively secluded area. He returned to his apartment, took a relaxing dip in the jacuzzi, and went back to Hunger Artist Theater to, of course, perform again that night. He then went to the cast party where there were pictures of him smiling, laughing, talking, and drinking. Wozniak went back to his apartment afterward, met with his brother Tim, and gave him a backpack filled with things he asked him to get rid of. He said there had been some trouble in the Camden apartments. It's not clear if Tim asked any questions, but Tim, loyal to his brother, agreed to get rid of the items. Tim was a little like the character Jess Piccoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, the archetype of a cartoonish blonde-haired Southern California surfer who has smoked way too much pot. Despite his brother's instruction not to open the bag, Tim couldn't resist, and he found a bloody mess, along with their father's antique pistol. He gave the gun to a friend, and like a child who thinks something out of sight is gone, Tim threw the backpack over a fence at Wozniak's parents' house. When police found the backpack, not hard, it was as if Dan had left us a Christmas present. Sam's clothing, watch, wallet, phone, and Dan's bloody clothes and gloves. All the evidence anyone might need just in case, for some reason, they doubted Dan's confession when he told us what he'd done and led us to where he dismembered Sam's body, dumped Sam's car, and discarded Sam's forearms and head. As cadaver dogs searched the nature center on Sam's birthday, as it happened, Steve Herr later testified he was just hoping and praying they find my son's head. Dan's DNA was found on Sam's bloody clothes. Police eventually recovered the murder weapon, which was forensically determined to have been used in both murders and was also covered in Dan's DNA. So the physical evidence was very strong. In fact, it was overwhelming. As the investigation continued, detectives requested forensic analysis of the various phones and computers that had been collected in this case. It turned out that the failed actor Daniel Wozniak, as if he wasn't done providing evidence, had conducted the following Google searches on the desktop computer in his apartment, making sure a body is not found, head gunshot, how to hide a body, quick ways to kill people. Worse, the analysis revealed that after he would do a search related to murder, he would then immediately look at cruise line to see which one might be the best for the honeymoon. He would Google the decibel level for a gunshot, then search for awesome vacation for actors in Mexico. You could literally read his mind based on the internet activity in the days leading up to the murders of Sam and Julie. Notably, one search he never conducted was how to get a legitimate job and pay his rent. Was this stupidity, arrogance, or heaping stacks of both? Most families who have lost a loved one to murder land somewhere on the spectrum between sadness and anger. June Kubayashi, Julie's mother, was obviously devastated. She loved her daughter, and she was sweet and kind and now broken. Steve Herr, on the other hand, was enraged. His son had survived the worst the Taliban could dish out, and he had made it home safely. Now his life had been taken by some loser too lazy and self-important to simply get a job. What do you do with that level of grief in a case like this? We had overwhelming evidence of guilt in these murders, given the planning and banality of the goal, and the senselessness of taking a human life so he could stage her like some sort of theater prop, were shocking. Daniel Wozniak also seemed to have precious little going his way in terms of mitigating circumstances. He was raised in a good home in a nice neighborhood. His mother and father loved him and provided for him, and he went to a fine high school. He wasn't mentally ill or a drug addict, and much like the Rodney Alcala, there was no evidence he was ever bullied or abused by anyone. If he ever was, it certainly wasn't at the hands of Julie Kubayashi or Sam Herr. He was just entitled and in love with his own ability to be clever. With overpowering evidence, a truly horrific crime, and zero meaningful mitigation, the elected district attorney, my main boss, decided we would seek the death penalty. I certainly did not disagree. I haven't yet explained what the decision to seek death really means under the law. In California, seeking the death penalty means a careful consideration and weighing of the aggravating and mitigating circumstances in each individual case. known as A through K factors. These aggravating and mitigating considerations include the circumstances of the offense, the impact on the surviving family members, other crimes of violence, and whether the defendant was under the influence of alcohol or drugs or under the influence of another person at the time they committed the act. A juror is tasked with weighing these factors against those in mitigation, which include pretty much anything that lessens or contextualizes the severity of the crime. Was the defendant horribly abused as a child? Was there a history between the victim and the defendant that put the killing into some sort of context? Did the juror have any sense of lingering doubt regarding the guilt of the defendant? The law allows for very wide latitude in what can properly be considered in mitigation, as it should. In the case of Daniel Wozniak, just like with Skylar DeLeon, Rodney Alcala, and others, the district attorney, Tony Rakakis, in this case, believes the crime was sufficiently shocking to seek death. The defense team assigned to Daniel Wozniak was composed of two very smart and experienced public defenders. One comported herself as a consummate professional. The other, in my opinion, did not. The problem is that when you inject the emotion of the death penalty and the near religious zeal with which some oppose it, a win at all costs mentality can creep in. Some defense lawyers will even resort to unfair accusations of misconduct against police officers, prosecutors, judges, and even victim family members, all in the name of preventing what they believe to be a barbaric result. The danger of allowing personal ideological belief to infect professional decision making is what you can quickly devolve into holding an unjustify the means mentality. If an attorney believes that the death penalty is barbaric, it takes a degree of professional discipline not to take the next step. It is a very slippery slope and one that the best defense lawyers manage to avoid. In 3,000 years of Western physiological thought, the ends have never justified the means, and they never will. Lawyers who engage in that form of advocacy, the tactical false accusation, quickly become the purveyors of exactly what they profess to abhor. Far too blind by anger and ideology to recognize the hypocrisy of what they are doing. Like former California Supreme Court Chief Justice Rose Byrd, they may get cheers from those of a similar ideological mindset, but I do believe it is intellectually dishonest and fundamentally unfair to the innocent family members who have to endure years of process that has been designed, after all, to ensure fairness. I believe the role of the criminal defense lawyer to be sacrosanct in the American system of justice. When a person is accused of a crime, any crime, there are and should be afforded a trained professional who will assert every lawful defense, argue every mitigating factor, and zealously represent the interests of the person who has been accused. What, after all, could be more ruinous to the life of a good person than to be accused of something they did not do? When an attorney appears to be motivated by ideology as much as by the law, even the fairest judges can reach their limits. After several years of continuous litigation, the assigned judge, in this case, the Honorable James Stotler, shocked the Orange County legal community when he announced, in effect, that he was so tired of the defense attorney's antics that he found himself entertaining biased thoughts against the lawyer, which he knew was unfair to the defendant and required his immediate removal. Stotler is a good man, a good judge, and it was certainly the right thing to do, but it set us back a year. The various pretrial motions filed by the defense, some certainly legitimate and necessary, ultimately required 192 hearings before the case finally went to trial. The Her and Kiyobashi families attended every single one of them. and it was brutal. Steve Hurd developed issues with his heart, and both June and Masa Kobayashi, Julie's parents, developed and then battled various forms of cancer while the case was pending. It is difficult to believe all of their health conditions were not made worse by the stress of the criminal proceedings. We finally got to the jury selection 5 years after the murders took place. Jury selection is critically important in any trial, but especially when you're asking 12 people to vote for death. Still, trial lawyers are some of the most superstitious people I know, and I am no exception. Like the baseball players in the movie Bull Durham, everyone has their set of rituals. For me, I have always felt like jury selection is a little like the first date. You want to make your finest impression and look your best, but you don't want the potential jurors to think you're trying too hard. I needed a new pair of dress shoes for the trial and had purchased a brand new pair of black Allen Edmonds Oxfords. I was getting ready for bed that night before jury selection and realized that I had not scuffed the shoes at all. I knew I was inevitably going to cross my legs at some point, and the jurors would see the bottoms of my shoes. I didn't want them to look new. This is the kind of thinking that went through my head before every trial, I promise. My most comfortable pajamas were Please Don't Judge Me Here, a pair of glow-in-the-dark zombie pajamas that I had been given as a gift. They might have been ridiculous, but they were cozy. I called my lead detective to quadruple check that all concealable discovery had been provided to the defense before we started the next day. I also wanted to get his thoughts on a couple of juror questionnaires. I walked outside to scuff up the bottoms of my new shoes and was pacing back and forth on the sidewalk outside my house. My neighbor had run his sprinklers and there was a wet newspaper on my driveway that I picked up, one of those rolled up free community papers that I intended to toss when I went back down my driveway. I was stressed and sad about more than just this case. The stray cat Carl I'd adopted that year before had just been run over by a car in front of my house and absolutely broke my heart. I was living on a residential street with 25 miles per hour speed limit, and a driver who struck my cat must have been going 50. The car didn't even stop. I was mad at the street, mad at the drivers, and stressed by the case, and we had national media in the courtroom day after day. I was operating on maybe 4 hours of sleep a night and reviewing juror questionnaires in my mind. One of the jurors had said they believed the death penalty was the same as murder, but they could be fair. Could they? With a core belief like that, I wasn't sure. And then I heard the deep, throaty sound of a V8 engine coming down the street. I could tell it was an SUV even though its brights were on. It blew through the stop sign on the corner without even slowing down. A dick move, especially considering how many children live on my street. And this guy was going at least 50. Carl's murderer, no doubt. I threw the wet newspaper at the side of the car as it sped past, and it turned out to be a good throw. A perfect throw, in fact, landing right in between the Manhattan Beach on the top of the front passenger door and police department underneath. It sounded like I hit a bass drum with a sledgehammer. The driver slammed on the brakes, and I was staring at two police officers, wondering what had just happened. And they saw some dude in glow-in-the-dark zombie pajamas and shiny new dress shoes with a shocked look on his face. "Hey, Jose," I said to my detective on the phone. "I think you might have to come up here and bail me out of jail, buddy. There's a great scene in the movie. This is Spinal Tap when one of the band leaders explained that the bizarre gardening accident that took the life of their first drummer was a mystery the police said was best left unsolved. I think this was one of those situations." After a moment, the driver hit the gas and kept on going. I pretended like I didn't throw anything, and they pretended nothing hit their car. better for everyone. The absurdity of that moment quickly gave way to serious questions about the trial. When picking a deaf qualified jury, you have to be very strategic about the choices you make. 12 people are randomly selected to be in the box at first, and you get 20 challenges to start knocking people out who you suspect might not go your way. But the more aggressive you get with your challenges, the more you're inviting your opponent to do the same. It's a very specific skill set, really. How well can you read the mind and read the heart of someone you've never met before? And how much do you want to risk that the next person who fills that seat won't be worse? On a previous case, I had learned a valuable lesson regarding deaf qualified jurors. The defendant was a man named Jason Balcom, accused of raping, sodomizing, and murdering a newly pregnant 22-year-old newlywed in her apartment in Costa Mesa in broad daylight. It was a cold case from 1988 that we had resurrected with DNA evidence, and I made a big jury selection mistake. There were 3 social workers from the very same office randomly selected on the jury. All of them truly would have been excellent jurors, but I got it in my head that I couldn't allow 3 people who knew each other from the same office. I kicked one of them, and his seat was filled by a woman who seemed perfect on paper. A rich, well-educated stay-at-home mother from Newport Beach, and I ignored the bad vibe I got from her. I instead relied on her absolutely ideal questionnaire. She ended up hanging the jury 11-1 for death, insisting she would never vote for it. We had to do a whole new penalty phase with a brand new jury, and he ended up getting the death penalty at the end of that one. But the strategic error stuck with me. I needed from that point forward to trust my gut before kicking someone out of the box, and to rely far more on how I felt about them than simply on what they had written on their questionnaire. Without questionnaires, which are rarely allowed by judges, you generally aren't given any information about potential jurors but their names, and you can't go home and research them. So a good lawyer will learn to look at every visible detail when evaluating a potential juror. What are they wearing? How do they carry themselves? What book are they holding as they walk into the courtroom? In the end, jury selection is far more art than science. What is the energy you feel? Are they interacting with other jurors? Paying attention to the judge? Is this a person who will likely listen to you in the end? You must learn to first develop an instinct and then trust it. Not to sound too Californian here, but it is as much about the person's vibe as anything tangible. And I think that's where I'm going to stop today. I want to interact with some of you. What do you think about what I've read? Is there still anybody in here? Did y'all leave? What do you think about Matt's rendition of some of the cases that he's tried and the formality of it all? You said you hate Dan? Dan was an asshole, right? Usually people kill for money, greed, or revenge, you know? But I hope that you enjoyed that. I hope that you enjoyed me reading it, because it's not easy to sit here and read, especially if you know very little about the book. Yeah, she put him out there like that. Said he had a small appendage. You know, true crime is really interesting. It really is because it all boils down to the mindset of people and how the mindset of how things things quickly spiral out of out of hand with some of these killers. Like they think they're geniuses, but they're really not. You know, they're really not. Once they're pressed, more often than not, they always fold. I just saw something from Viviana I thought was hilarious. I'm gonna share with you guys. This is hilarious. She put this his new career now that the Koberger gravy train is just about over. Wow. That's hilarious. Good old Pav. Good old Pav. Isn't that hilarious? No, he killed him because he wanted his money. No other reason. He wanted that $62,000. No other reason. That's why he killed that guy. And he killed the female to stage that Sam ultimately killed her to throw the cops off from looking his direction. You know what's sad, y'all? I'm gonna talk with y'all a little bit because I haven't talked to you this weekend. I've just been posting stuff. I've been seeing a lot of stuff. Um, I just saw this. I just saw this. I follow this Facebook group, right? The Idaho Murdered or whatever. And somebody posted, how could Kaylee have said somebody's here if she was asleep? I want to ask you guys in the chat, guys and gals, do you believe people will ever let this case die? Do you believe that this case will ever die? Even after this man is sentenced to life? Because don't get it twisted. He's going to be serving 4 consecutive life sentences. 4. Plus a 10-year sentence for burglary. This man is not going to live past his first life sentence. Honestly, Leslie, I don't see one coming down the pipe. There's plenty that are bigger. There's still people don't want to let it go. They are attached to this case like nothing else I've ever seen in my life. Even OJ was not this bad. Once OJ was innocent, people left it alone. I mean, there's some cases right now that if you really deep dove into it, it'd blow your minds. But you know the true thing about true crime is not every case is going to be a CSI made for movie type thing. You know what I mean? Hey, Farrah, how you doing? You said, I think he will write about himself in prison, try to figure out a Shawshank Redemption escape that may or may not happen. Hey, that's an interesting theory right there. That is an interesting theory. Well, the way some people talk on these platforms, you think they'd be willing to go and and bust them out themselves, you know? There's some women on here that are in love with this guy. I mean, I want you to be honest with me. At what point did you finally tell yourself, you know what, the dude's guilty, let's move on? Because I know we've been doing lives after lives after lives. Tell me, at what point did you finally come to the conclusion in your mind to say, that's it, the dude's guilty? Had he not plead, in your mind, would he have got the death penalty? Yeah. They're trying to get the Innocence Project going. Do they not realize that once you plead guilty, there's no way the Innocence Project can help you? Do they not realize that the Innocence Project is for wrongly convicted cases where individuals are sentenced to their sentences, not pleas? Do they not realize that? Why is the Innocent Project going to take on a case where the individual pleaded to guilt? There's no prison gang in the Kuna ID Max security he's going to be in. They planned on escape, and I think some escaped but were caught. Their initials are AKs, and they may want BK for something. Oh, there is a prison gang. Okay. Aryan Nights. Yeah, I heard this lady talking about that yesterday. I don't know how much I believe her, but she sounded pretty credible. I mean, you know, she sounded a lot more logical than the panel she was on, for sure. I knew he was involved somewhere, but I totally believed another was involved too. I'm as bad as the others. I still think there's one more. Well, at least you're honest. At least you're honest, right? But I challenge you to this challenge, Ludley. Put the pieces together. If you believe there's some other person, this is how you do it. You take that person's name and you backtrack. How? It's kind of like, you know, you see those pegboards with the yarn and the thumbtacks and all that. You got to do it like that. You got to backtrack and say, well, how is this person logically connected to Brian? How are they? I'm not talking about these fake ways that people are made up, where they made up anybody and everybody is related to Brian. I'm not talking like that. I'm talking about if you're going to really look into that there's another person, how did that person do it? How was he able not to get caught? And Brian was. I mean, if you're gonna do it correctly. Investigate it to the fullest. And I'm talking about vehicles. I'm talking about DNA samples. I'm talking about exactly what you heard the prosecution has against Brian. They should have the same material on this alternate perp if there is indeed one. Because honestly, you can't just ask that question that a lot of people ask. Well, what about those two inconclusive DNAs in the house? Well, I could see that, Farah. But Leslie, as I was saying, with those other two inconclusive DNA samples in that house, you have to be able to make those two fit two people. And it has to make sense. Otherwise, you're just as bad as other people out here. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people that have pushed a lot of different narratives, whether it's in entertainment, whether it's them just seeing, how far they can push the envelope. Like I could sit here tonight and say, well, you know what? I changed my mind. Brian isn't innocent. There's no way. There's no way anybody's going to believe that. No way. And one thing that's really going to blow your mind is when the gag order is finally lifted. And you're actually going to see that there's very methodical ways how this crime went, how it happened. But I would suggest something before you look at the dissemination order. I want you to clear your mind and start at page 1 and don't think of any other creator and what they've said about this case and make up your own mind once you read every document. Because then you'll be able to be open-minded. But the moment that you start to have those other creators, theories, and everything else play in your head, you've already ruined it for yourself. No, I wasn't having doubts. I don't know what gave you that, but no, I wasn't. I've always believed he was the one. Always. That's why I have such a big fan base, because I made so many friends along the way just by believing that he was guilty. Yeah, I mean, it's like, have you ever gotten in trouble as a kid and you tried to blame it on your sibling, and your parents say, "Well, this is how I know it was you," and they break it all down for you, and then after they break it down to you, you're like, "Yeah, you're right. I can't go against that. You know too much." That's kind of like this case. That's kind of like a lot of cases. There's a reason why people go to trial. Like Matt Murphy just said in his book, defense attorneys use all different type of tactics, especially if they don't believe in the death penalty. They're going to attack the police. They're going to attack the judges. They're going to attack the attorneys. They're going to attack anybody and everybody to try to discredit them because they don't believe in the death penalty. It has nothing to do with their client being innocent or guilty. It's just the fact that they don't want their client to face that kind of justice. You get what I'm saying? It's like, if I didn't believe in the death penalty, I would be hell bent on trying to convince you that I could see how life in prison will work for this man, but the death penalty, no. And you're saying, well, he killed 4 people. Don't you believe that he needs to get the death penalty? Well, yeah, I kind of see that. But remember when the prosecutor said, well, he went in there and they really don't know if he intended to kill all 4. What if he just intended on killing 1 and, things just went out of hand and he ended up killing the other 3? So did that really constitute giving him the death penalty? What kind of fucked up thinking is that? He may have not intended to kill the other 3? I mean, listening to Bill Thompson read that stuff was just about as bad as listening to Ann. Now I see why they work together hand in hand. Because they both sound the same. It's all been an act. They were going to play out no matter what. And I told people that. He's going to plea. Yeah, that came from the prosecutor. All this bullshit that we've been drugged through, just to hear the person standing up there fighting for the families, fighting for the community, and fighting for the state, to sit there and say, well, he may have not intended to kill more than 1 person. But he did, Bill. He did. Yeah, I've heard Matt say that. I know Matt would have gone full force, man. He would have gone full force. He would have convicted him and got the death penalty. I know he would have. Matt's a bulldog. He really is. You're so right, Walt. You're so right. She was a LeBron. It's almost like they might as well just, her and Bill Thompson might as well held hands while he read what he read. You know what I mean? It's like, what the hell, bro? What the hell? Yeah, he's gonna try to give all that money back. I don't blame him. At least he's trying to do something. But I mean, they might as well. And then to make of it like Bicca Barlow and Massoff were so concerned about Brian that they were holding hands. I swear, some of these people need to get some sleep and they need to get off the dope. Because they see and hear and read things that nobody else in the world seems to read, see, or hear. Did y'all see them holding hands? They were not holding hands. Don't you dare sit there and type that they were holding hands. Were they holding hands? For reals. I don't think he'll say any more at the sentencing. I think they've said everything they're going to say. The judge is basically going to say, after consideration, I have not found any reasoning to lessen the charges against you or the sentencing. So, as agreed by the plea bargain, I agree that you will serve 4 consecutive life sentences with 10 years for burglary, premeditated murder. And you will be charged restitution, blah, 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 blah. They're not holding hands, Farah. People have zoomed in on this where all you see is pixels. Bika is having hers on her glasses or something. It's an optical illusion, just like everything else. Just like they told us that Anne put her hand on Brian's shoulder and said, "My client is innocent." If you rewind that, you will see clearly she does not touch him. You know? But, it is what it is. If you see it, you see it. If you don't, you don't. I personally don't see it. But if I ever do see it and I'm wrong, I will come back and tell you, hey, I was wrong. They actually were holding hands, singing Kumbaya. I mean, doesn't it get crazier by the day? One thing I don't understand, and I won't ever understand, I think, is we all wanted information on this case. We had individuals swearing up and down, all we wanted justice for the 4. Just tell us what happened. Well, how much clearer does it got to get? 4 people were murdered in that house. How are you not capable of understanding that there was 4 people murdered in a house? Make it clear for me because I don't understand it. How can you not understand that 4 people were murdered? Oh, Cyree. Yeah, he was going to be the superhero. They always have a superhero going to show up to the next hearing to save the day. Really, where was he spotted at? Where was he spotted? I'm glad Brian pled out. I really am. Am I mad about it? Like I've said all along, I don't know the dude. Idaho mountains. Oh, if they shoot him there, they'll try to make him connected to the Coeur d'Alene firefighters, connected to the Idaho 4, connected to the Oregon murders, connected to Ted Bundy. Yeah, they ought to just turn into the new Matlock to get their heroic legal fixes. Decker was spotted in the Sawtooth. I don't know where that is. Idaho National Forest. Go figure. Well, the one thing about him that is it's pretty cool at this point is he's not killing anybody else. I don't have to admit anything, Leslie. He only did this so his college professor could write a book about him. Is another one. I mean, does there, if he did this to just jerk himself off on the way back to his house, fantasizing about the blood he got all over him, did it really matter in the end? What was the reasoning behind it? There was, I mean, the motive. Honestly, it doesn't, because the fact of the matter is, he admitted to it. He stood up there and said yes after the judge read each charge brought against him. Yeah. And he did it proudly. He wasn't all shy and shit. You know, it wasn't like he stood up there really barely muddled. Yes. He yelled that shit out with his chest out, like JB Gunner says. That came from deep. Yes. 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 It's almost like every time he said yes, he was killing the person again. I mean, it's pathetic. He's a loser, man. I mean, you know? Leslie, let me ask you this, okay? Let me ask you this. Thank you, Farah. Leslie, let me ask you this. You said they didn't even test the glove for DNA. Do you think that they test every little bit of evidence that they find at a crime scene? I'm asking you a question. Yeah, he said it loud and proud, unlike anybody else. He would like BTK up there. BTK was like proud of his. He was reliving it. This dude, if he could have spoke even more, he would have been telling us the whole story of how it happened, because he was getting off on it in the courtroom. As Bill Thompson was reading that, you could tell his eyes were fixated on him, not breaking stance, nothing. You know? I mean, if you take out all the media stuff, all the YouTube stuff, and you would have just heard about this case, and you would have been following it, and nobody would have been commentating on it. Nobody would have been doing videos like I've done. Nobody would have been sat here for hours commentating on it. And then you heard that he pleaded out. You watched the last hearing, and he pleaded out. Could you been at peace with yourself? Could you have been like, oh, okay, the dude pleaded out. He took accountability. Not what I wanted, but you know, it's his life, not mine, right? People turned this case into their own personal movie and did not get the ending they wanted. That's 150%, JB. And that's why they're so mad about it. That's why they can't let it go. But I thought they wanted the death penalty off the table. Isn't that what people wanted? We don't want him put to death. He's innocent. Okay, well, he's not going to the death. He's not going to the firing squad. You know? He's not going to the firing squad. Why are you still angry? Why are you still pissed off? The dude said he did it. You're so right on that, Walt. I would have seen that coming too. Just to have 2 more years of this in the news. You're just looking at stars. I think BK's trilogy of terror is not over yet. I mean, what would they say if he kills somebody in prison? Will they say that he was provoked? Then he was just protecting himself, right? The fascination with this dude is unfreaking believable. I heard this lady that's supposedly a lawyer, and she went off the rails last night about him. She went off the rails. Like, she was yelling at her audience. She was telling them she didn't give a damn, blah, blah, blah. And of course, who was up there as the ringleader? Twizzle. The most brilliant person on YouTube. I say they put him in the same cell with Chad Daybell. Let him fight it out. Whoever walks out wins. I mean, honestly, at one point they ought to see who the baddest of the bad is. If you think you're bad out here in the world, kind of have like a fight night, schedule it one at a time, one day at a time. First you start with this guy and then you go to this guy. Tyler Mead next, so you go from there. I caught some of that last night and couldn't believe what I was hearing. Yeah. I mean, you can't make that shit up. You really can't. How many of you sent BK some commissary money? There you go, Walt. Maybe we can promote that. Scott Peterson versus Brian Koberger on the White House lawn next July 4th. Yeah, nuts. If she really is a lawyer. You know what I heard today from a lot of people that pissed me off, actually? People are acting like they know what they would have done in a flood situation. A lot of people were saying the little girl should have just treaded water. Yeah, the water that's going 40 miles an hour. 75 million gallons of water coming at you with cars and RVs and tree debris and God knows what in it. You're just going to sit there and tread water to get to safety. It's like, what the hell? What the living hell are you really taking before you go on a live stream? Yeah, it's a miracle some did. One girl got swept down from upstream 12 miles till she was able to grab on a tree and hung on that tree for an hour. Yes, but it's not like, I looked at it further today and their camp was higher ground. It wasn't like right next to the river, like within a couple feet, like I thought. So the river rose above the bank and went up toward their cabin and took them out. So they were trying to get out and they were trying to get across the river to get to the other side of safety, because I think they were stuck on the island side where there is no roads in or out. And you literally walk across the river to get to that side, I guess. I really don't know. But yeah, most of the younger girls were at the. I mean, they weren't in log cabin type cabin. These were sturdy cement brick structures. But I believe they got swept away when they were coming out of the cabin trying to get to safety. I believe that's when they. I mean, because it's so easy to lose your footing. You know what I mean? Oh, you. They're saying it, Leslie. They're saying it. And it's the parents' fault because they didn't teach them how to swim. I'm sure there are YouTubers who think that flood was caused by George Soros and everyone who got caught up in the flood was an actor. Yeah, we do. Tragic actors, that's who they are, right? Yeah, the cabins are very well built. But you have water coming in there, it's gonna take what? If you're 8 or 9 years old, how much do you really weigh? You don't weigh hardly anything. And there were two little girls, they were sisters, they were found holding hands together. They died together, but they were found holding hands together. Which is so freaking sad, man. But instead of talking great about the people that were deceased and honoring their memory, we're going to talk shit about the parents. We're going to talk shit about the government. We're going to talk about everything and everybody but the victims. You know what I mean? It's tragic. Well, you tell me 40 miles an hour floodwaters raging outside your home right now. You're going to go out there and tread water with all kinds of shit in it. Not to mention you're being thrown through trees and bark and you name it. You're right. Well, you're right. I can't imagine. Hell, I've been on a river that wasn't going that fast, but it seemed like it was going that fast. I fell off the inner tube. It felt like I was going to drown. I mean, it's just like you cannot get your bearings because when you come up from the water, here comes some more water hitting you in the face. I mean, it's hard to it's hard to collect your bearings. Yeah, 40 or 55 when you weigh 45 to 55 ounces. Yeah. My grandmother died in a flood. She was never found, most likely buried in mud. Flooding and mud are devastating. You're right. I'm sorry to hear that, JB. My condolences to you and your family. Yeah, I just saw earlier where this car was dug out of the mud. Like the mud buried the car. And they had to dig the car out. You know what? I get what you're saying. And the reality is, people should not speak on shit they have no clue what they're talking about. You know? Just because you want to be that creator that has that sympathy thing going on, there's a lot of them. I'm not calling just one out, okay? There's a lot of them. I've heard a lot of people talking shit about this tragedy. And they all seem to have that lack of empathy. That lack of empathy when it comes to people that pass away. Instead, you turn on everybody but the victim. You can't memorialize them. You can't say good things about the victim. No, it's always about the parents. They had shitty parents. That's why they died. Come on, man. Do y'all really believe that narrative? You really believe that people think that out here on these YouTube streets? That all these little kids that go missing or that they get murdered, it's because they had crappy parents. That's why they ended up murdered or missing. Do y'all really believe that? A story about a dad drowning trying to hold his kids on a mattress above the water. People that have never experienced a situation usually know it all not. You're right. But they convince other people they know exactly what they're talking about. I've heard countless, even mainstream media reports. I've heard it from all over, and I'm like, do you really hear yourself what you're saying? You really think that your fat ass would jump in that water to try to save somebody and you'd be able to swim? Hell, there was a guy that was trying to break a window to get his family on the top of the RV. He sliced his artery and bled out and died. And they were just there to have a good time that weekend. But there's a lot of people that always have so much to say about these things that happen. And most of the time, it's never about investigation. It's never about teaching people about the criminal act. It's not about teaching them about the severity of the laws or anything that's going on with the case. It's always about their perspective, their reaction. You know what I mean? It's like, here this dude busted out a window trying to save his family. Did he realize he was going to cut his artery? No, he did not. He was doing what most men do and try to save their family. And he ended up perishing because of it. This lady had 23 RVs on her land. And all 23 were swept away in a matter of minutes. I mean, so much can happen in a matter of minutes. It's kind of like saying, well, your parents should have taught you how to fly to be able to survive a tornado in case you get sucked up into it. That's kind of like the logic that I hear on the YouTube streets. Like, well, you wouldn't have died if you would have knew how to fly. Your parents would have taught you how to fly or not had you in that vicinity. They're such bad parents for having you in that area. The last flood that went through this place was 1987. So from 1987 to 2025, there had not been any floods, any deaths, anything like that associated with the flood. So to say that people should not have been at church camp or that people should have known how to swim and all this other stuff, all this other rhetoric. How many of y'all in chat have ever attended a church camp or some kind of camp in the summer and nothing bad happened? There's countless people. But all you need is one act of nature to go wrong. And you know what? We're all just a moment away from losing our lives. You get what I'm saying? Y'all need to lighten up on blaming these parents for everything that goes wrong with their children. Because you know what? It's not always the parents' fault. It really isn't. If you have grandkids listening to this, think about going to bed tonight. If your grandkids are over at your house and you go to sleep and they stay awake watching movies in the living room or watching or playing games or whatever they do, and then you wake up in the middle of the night because you get a bad feeling. You walk into the living room and those kids are gone. And you can't find them. And then the whole world turns on you and tries to make it that you killed them or you took them or you had something to do with their disappearance. How would you feel on that? I know some of you have grandchildren that stay the night with you. How would you feel if all of a sudden the whole world is turning on you and looking under every little thing you've done wrong in the world to try to make you a bad person because something happened to your grandchild and you should have been protecting them? What do y'all think about that? You think that's crap? Wasn't it Elizabeth Smart, the one that got abducted from her bedroom where her sister saw her get abducted? God, if the internet would have been around then, I'm sure those parents would have been to blame. People are so quick to speak on something they know nothing about. And automatically the parents are drug addicts, the parents are insane, they have mental disorders, they have all this, that, and the other. I'm not saying that people don't, but not everybody. Not everybody. Leslie, how would you feel if something, I mean, I'm not trying to wish this on you or your family. I know you have a little granddaughter that you love. But if something were to happen and then everybody blamed you for not hearing it, not seeing it, not understanding it, and you should have been more mindful because you are the adult in the home and you should have done more, how would you feel? Oh, I'm pretty sure they would, Walt. Those parents handed her over. Think about that a little bit. Wouldn't it piss you off? Or worse yet, to say that you, a grieving father, was in the house while your daughter was being murdered and you had something to do with that because of your Bitcoin situation. That's what got your daughter murdered, and you were there witnessing it. Her and her best friend's murder. And you were okay with it. This sounds logical to people? This is the world we live in on YouTube, right? They do everything but make it a race war. I mean, I'm kind of scared to present the Carmelo Anthony case because it is a black individual killing a white male. And I mean, it's already received a lot of hatred, but you know, it needs to be told from an unbiased perspective. I mean, the dude killed him. Being accused of something horrible happening stays forever. Yeah, just like I was saying this weekend while I was at that church, that Creekside church. Missy Beavers was killed there at that church. And here I am in 2025. After all the people that have been associated with that church, going to that church and praising and worshiping and all this stuff, here comes a YouTuber in 2025 cruising through the parking lot, getting footage, asking somebody about Missy Beavers. In 2025, years later, and that's what your church is known for. That football stadium that I went to will forever be known as the place where Carmelo Anthony killed Austin Metcalf. Forever. They're not going to tear it down because football is big business in Texas. You're not going to tear down some stands because somebody died there. But I can tell you, there's a lot of these places that forever are linked to horrible situations. And no matter how you turn it, how you conspiralize it, whatever, something awful happened there is the end result. Yeah, I'm gonna start covering that case, Farah. Murder is murder. The color did not commit the crime. The individual did. Don't be afraid to talk about it. I'm not afraid. It's one of those cases. Just one of those cases. But I'm gonna start doing it. I mean, I'm gonna slowly edge into it because I'm doing research to not just jump in with what the narrative is, because it has a lot of ups and downs right now. But I hope that people really start to listen to people when they're in their chats, because there's a lot of people that do lives on missing kids. There's some wonderful platforms such as Mind the Monsters, Arctic Fox, Doodlebug, and on and on and on. There's some wonderful creators that obviously do an awesome job. They don't misinterpret the cases, none of that. But on these others, you have to listen to what is being said. I know a lot of times people go in the chat not to listen to the creator, but just to socialize. And that's understandable. But you have to ask yourself, who am I supporting here? Because if the person you're supporting is a thief or a robber or an arsonist or a rapist, is that who you want to be viewed as? Supporting somebody that has that kind of platform? I wouldn't think so. Just be very mindful. I mean, you're an adult. You're going to do as you wish. But y'all know the truth. Y'all know the truth from fiction. I don't need to tell you. I hope we finally get the attention back on the victims. Back on the victims instead of accusing everybody under the sun because we don't know. I'd rather somebody say, you know what, let's talk about this today. I don't know if there's anything new on it. I don't know if there's any kind of information new. But let's go over what we got so far. Let's see if we can possibly see or hear something different. I would respect that a whole hell of a lot more than you telling me it's the parents' fault. Do I agree that every parent is perfect? No, because I work with a lot of parents that are far from it. But pointing fingers at somebody is not going to make a change. Yelling about it's not going to make a change. I mean, because most people can't see their flaws. Even if you point them out to them, they can't see them. They're so used to lying to everybody else, they've gotten good at lying to themselves. You know, denial is a wonderful thing for a lot of people. So it doesn't help to even try to hold people accountable on YouTube because they're not going to understand it because they don't want to. If they did, they wouldn't be on here spewing this shit. The worst is when people in YouTube chat from dump on the parents whose kid is missing or whose daughter was unalive. The Sebastian Rogers case comes to mind. All three parents love their son. Exactly. But no, you got to choose a side. You got to make an enemy, right? There has to be an enemy. There has to be good and evil. You cannot just say you don't know. Hell, there's countless people that said, if it turns out to be Brian being guilty, I'll be the one that'll be right there along everybody else saying, uh, okay, I'll accept it and move on. How many people have recanted that? There's a lot. But I'm not trying to hold you hostage. I've held your attention for 2 hours and 16 minutes. I hope you guys enjoy the evening. I hope you guys enjoy the evening. Do understand that a full moon is around the corner. Make sure you hydrate. Keep your hydration up. And if people start to get a little short with you or they're a little off, just let them be where they're at. My parents taught me to see everything in black and white, and my life didn't get better till I realized the totality in every situation. Things aren't always good versus bad. There's nuances. You're right. Yeah, and if you're on medication, be sure to take your meds because we all know what happens when people don't take care of themselves. It's like a car that you don't check the oil, check the gas, it breaks down, right? Full moon fever. You're right, Farah. You are right. You guys be looking for the Carmelo Anthony case. And I think I'm going to delete a video because people are talking shit about it. Not a video, but a short. Anyways, y'all have a wonderful night. Maestro, cue that music.